church family, welcome back to another word in review. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Ari. I'm a member of Faith Dimensions Ministries Church in Wolverton in Milton Keynes, and what we do here is just basically break down the message that we heard on Sunday. So that's what I'm about to do. The service message was Our Faithful God, and the scripture was taken from Lamentations 3 verse 22 to 26, and I'm just going to read it really quickly in the New King James Version. It says, "Through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful, encouraging scripture. And the first thing that jumps to mind when I think of Lamentations is that it's one of the books that I don't really read. But what I love when I read this scripture, when I heard this scripture, is right now it really reminds me, and to me is really reflective of the Psalms. I remember seeing somewhere that the whole Bible is kind of God speaking to us, but Psalms is that one book where it's us being able to speak to God. And I think that's reflective here. One of the key themes that ran through the message on Sunday when Pastor was speaking was about, the favor of God, the faithfulness of God, but really we kept coming back to the point of where our heart is. And I think that's so important because with God, everything truly is about the heart. What's so cool about reflecting Lamentations over back to Psalms is we know that, one of the key writers of the Psalms was David, King David. Now, King David, sometimes he was a mess, but ultimately he was a man after God's own heart. So when we think about it's a heart thing, I think David is such a great example of somebody who shows us what it really means to love God with all of your heart. And when I read this scripture in Lamentations, it really reminds me of the way that David speaks. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion. I hope in him. The Lord is good. All of these affirmations of who God is help us to remember and keep our hearts in check. Scripture says we should guard our hearts. And I think sometimes it's hard to remember, how do we protect our hearts? How do we make sure that our hearts are right towards God? Sometimes we go through difficult things. The things going on in the world right now are difficult. Many people are struggling. Many people are going through all sorts of things. How do we really keep our heart in check? Because the faithfulness of God is a non-disputed factor. You can believe it or you cannot believe it, but God doesn't become any more or any less faithful. He is faithful. It's not, I think sometimes we think of God's faithfulness as something he does. I think we need to think of God's faithfulness as something he is. God is faithful. That is his character and that can never change. So what we have to do is protect our hearts in seasons of waiting, in seasons of expectations, in seasons of anticipation, and even in the seasons of blessing. Sometimes we can be so blessed we forget who the blesser is. And sometimes we can be waiting for a blessing so long we forget about God's faithfulness. So in all of this, the main undercurrent or the underlying message is, how do we protect our hearts? What I love about this scripture in particular is if you read it, it sounds like an affirmation. It reminds us of God, who God is. It reminds us of how to wait. There's a scripture in Luke that says, "In your waiting, possess your soul." I feel like the whole of this scripture, Lamentations 3, 22 to 26, kind of encompasses that. God is faithful. It affirms to us that great is your faithfulness. His compassions don't fail. They are new every morning. Then it flips back to us. The Lord is my portion, so I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. So we see God's character, we see how our character should be, and we see how those two things relate and form a relationship. The Lord is good to us. The Lord is good. We should wait for his goodness, and the Lord will be good to us. I think that is so encouraging. It's so hard sometimes to remain encouraged in difficult times. And sometimes it's hard to remember how good God has been, even in the good times. We have tendencies as humans to forget, to be so wrapped up in our blessings that we forget who blessed us. But I think whether you're in a season of waiting, whether you're in a season of blessing, what we can take from this is the Lord is faithful. We should affirm every morning, every day, continue to guard our hearts by affirming to ourselves who God is. God is faithful. He is good. His mercies are new every morning. I will hope for him. I will wait for him. The Lord is my portion. Continue to repeat those things to yourself. Affirm those things to yourself. Guard your heart in that way. And whether you are waiting or whether you are in that season of abundance and plenty. Remember who your source is, and remember that God is faithful. Faithfulness isn't something he does. Faithfulness is who he is. And it's something I need to remember too. So as I'm saying it, I'm encouraging myself. Hope everyone has a great week and hope you've been encouraged by the word. Would love to see you on Sunday. We have baptism, so definitely tune in or be there. But ultimately, stay blessed, stay encouraged this week, and God bless you.